how many of you attend EBRs and QBRs for the products that you use in your company? And not one person raised their hand. So I in turn then said, then why would you expect any of your customers' executives to attend these meetings? Like, can we just stop? It's these silly things that we have put in place because they worked in consulting, and they do, because the way consulting does, they drive value. So we stole this idea from a consulting framework, tried to put it in place. We fucked it up, for lack of better words. And now we continue to drive these motions that don't make sense for these businesses. So all we're trying to do right now, the three of us, is like, let's all wear glasses and a black t-shirt and try to figure out how do we do exactly the same thing. Different organizations.
Going,
it is a vibe today.
It is a vibe. Yeah. Customer escalations is a great opportunity to do a lot of things. One, you're going to get a lot of engagement from that executive.
Because it's bad.
Because it's bad. And they're going to be all over you, fine. The quiet ones, customers I'm worried about. The ones that are yelling at me, no problem. We have a playbook for that.
The pushback that I'm going to give to both of you, and then we can close the book on this and say that we solved the biggest problem in customer success.
Unturned is presented by UpdateAI.
Hey, Josh.
And Josh isn't here today. Hey, guys, this is Jon Johnson, one of the lovely and effusive co-hosts of the Unchurned podcast and CSMs. I'm joined by the effervescent Kristi Faltorusso and our new best friend, Mike Sasaki. Sasaki?
Close.
Sasaki.
Sasaki.
Yes.
Sasaki. I just wanted him to butcher it. Sorry,
I was
Mike.
so close. I practiced.
See, Mike's not a new friend for me, John. So Mike's an old, dear friend.
Okay, so I should have had you do the intro. Well, because Josh Schachter isn't here, this is going to be a more uplifting and positive episode. But he is away overseas in London on a vacation. And we'll catch up with him more next week. He did a pretty incredible CS meetup in London this last week and has posted some stuff on LinkedIn about it if you want to catch up with that. But we'll get some more insight from the topics that he had next week on our pod. But today, I'm pretty excited to have this wonderful conversation with Mike Sasaki. And we got a pretty wide-ranging set of topics. And one of the places that we wanted to start, kind of in our normal CS and BS thing, is kind of to bullshit about kind of what we're feeling in the industry and where we're at today. One of the things that Mike and Kristi and I chatted about before I hit record was a trend that we're kind of seeing in the LinkedIn echo chamber of seems like there's a lot of people pulling the fire alarm on what customer success is and what it isn't and what it should be and where it's going. I've got some opinions. I've got some thoughts. And I know Kristi and Mike do as well. But I just kind of wanted to open it up. Like, what have we been hearing, Kristi, with your leadership circles that you're in and your other podcasts that we're happy to promote here? But what are we feeling when it comes to the industry in large as we're transitioning into maybe growth in the economy or maybe a softer landing for software and services this year? What you got?
All right, I'm going to open it up and then I'm going to pass it to Mike and then we could take it back, John. So I'm going to tell you, I don't think. What I am seeing and hearing is that there is a lot of like contradictions about what customer success should be or shouldn't be, or where we should be headed or where we shouldn't be headed. But I think the challenge for me is where this is coming from. And I guess not where, but who it's coming from. So one of the things that I've been really keen on lately is checking my sources. And a lot of folks go and claim a lot of things.
Media literacy.
The internet allows us to all say whatever you want to go say on the internet. But as I go and validate, one of the things that I'm seeing is that like a lot of this messaging is coming from folks who aren't in practitioner roles. They're not in the C-level roles where they're not the ones driving this. The second observation I'm making is that they're contradicting themselves. I'm seeing a lot of folks post one thing, then they read something else and they go and post something else. So if you go and just read the stream of consciousness that is someone's individual post, not an individual day, you're going to start to see folks are contradicting themselves. And then where is the data that is validating this? I don't know. So I'm all up in arms because I just feel like I'm calling bullshit on a lot of this. And honestly, what I'm saying, tried and true too, is doing what's best for my business. And I'm ignoring what everybody else is saying because I've got my own set of challenges. I've got my own unique customers that need certain things from us. I've got a product that's in its own position. And I feel like if I start letting all of these distractions on LinkedIn take up space, I'm not going to be doing what the business needs me to do. So those are my. I
got a couple thoughts, and Mike, I'm going to jump to you.
Mike, what are your thoughts here?
I'm glad you said that. You were able to articulate all the feelings and emotions that I have when I'm on LinkedIn and I'm reading, we need to be doing this or that, or we need to be under the CRO, or we need to be driving revenue, et cetera. And really not being able to tie it back to the things that I built my career on, right? And the motions that I'm used to. So I automatically go to not necessarily checking my sources, which was a good reminder that you had, and I will be doing that. But like, how can I simplify things and go back to basics? And what are the KPIs that matter, right? So that's kind of where I'm at, trying to filter through all the advice, all the experts in customer success offering their advice, and deciding like where's the industry heading, and that kind of lands with what is the right role for me moving forward.
Yeah, that's good. Echoing what you guys are saying, I think that something that we talked about, I think when we started this podcast a couple of years ago, Kristi, was just this idea that like there's a lot of people sharing opinions on LinkedIn that aren't based in reality or based in fact. And I think what I'm seeing is that a lot of people took what people have been saying on LinkedIn as, hey, this is a best practice, or hey, this is something that you should be doing if it fits your use case, as gold and as fact. Is like everything has to be this. I talked to so many new CSMs through CS Insider that are just like, this is not what I thought it would be. I thought that I was going to have clearly defined roles. I thought I was going to understand. They were just going to hand me a playbook and I was going to do the thing and it was going to succeed and the customer's going to renew. And it's like, oh, sweet summer child. Like absolutely everything depends, and it depends on so many factors. It depends on your stage. I was talking on LinkedIn this week about somebody asked like, should we be generalist or should we be specialist? And I was like, well, it really depends on the stage that you're in. And I don't feel like there is enough opportunity in these conversations to delineate where those differences lie. And I think that's actually what I love about customer success, and why actually I'm not concerned about any of the people that are crying the house is on fire, or, whatever they want to say, that it's over and it's done and we need to rethink all of these things. It's like, no, actually, we've been rethinking these things every quarter, because every single quarter, a new challenge comes up and a new economic crisis comes up and a new platform competitor comes up, and we have to rethink the way that we engage with our customers. To your point, Mike, getting back to what are those key KPIs? And they may change. One of the main people that I work with is Amazon at user testing. And one of the things that is a constant within Amazon is that every 3 months they come to us with a different goal. They're such a big behemoth organization that you can't say, here's my health plan and here's my success plan, and we're just going to follow this for the next 3 years. It's absolutely not true. And I think that there's a lot of people that are coming to terms with that. And they're saying, oh shit, it's broken. And you're like, no, it's actually working as intended. You're just not being as flexible as you need to be. Thoughts, opinions?
I can
Dead
go.
air.
So I think one thing that I always struggle with, and you see this in conferences, you see this in LinkedIn, is, okay, I can agree that these are the KPIs. We need to be more revenue focused, but how? Like, how do we do that? Like, what does that look like day to day? What does that look like week to week, right? How do we report on that? And I think that's really the area where I can be vulnerable here. Is like, I've been pretty weak at over the last few years, prior to maybe the last year, in really being more operationally sound. And what I mean by that is, if you look how sales ops works, right? How sales runs things with pipeline, with weekly meetings, with really investigating a lot of the deals, and you can translate that into the customer success world, like with health and things like that, and customer success leads, et cetera. I have not done a good job of doing a weekly meeting, hosting a weekly meeting, and really investigating and asking the questions about why is this customer help this? What are we doing about that? What is our red to green plan? And let's get updates next week. Let's elevate that up to the management team, right, on a more regular cadence, and having more rigor and discipline around that. That's where I've been really weak. And that's where I'm looking to get much stronger in how I lead a customer success org. So those are just my thoughts. I don't even know if I answered the question, but it just randomly went off.
Kristi, what do you think?
My thoughts on this, Mike, is that you're not alone in that sentiment, right? Like every single person in a leadership role is having to flex different muscles than they've had to before to kind of adjust accordingly. So I don't think that is a deficiency or a shortcoming of yours. I think we all have strengths in certain areas, and everyone is having to really hone in on all of them, because it's requiring us to just operationalize as a different type of leader than we've ever had to before, and really sharpen the skills around all of these things, right? We've got to be experts in driving value and having strategic conversations. We've got to be experts in understanding, product innovation and how to drive that forward in accordance with the business and with our customers. We've got to be experts in driving revenue. It's, our roles have so grossly evolved, and expanded in a way that I don't think that any of us could have truly anticipated, 5-10 years ago. So I don't see it as a shortcoming. I think it's something we're all having to be better at. And I mean, I'm in the same boat, right? There's tons of things I think I do exceptionally well, but we have a small team and I have so few resources at my disposal that I'm always challenged every single day with what is my top priority right now? And it changes week to week. I kid you not. So it means every week it's like what I need to prioritize and what I'm focusing on with the team looks different than what I did last week. My team must think I'm a crazy person. I'm pretty confident that they all agree, but it's hard, right? Because I've got to be an expert in all these areas, but we've got to be driving the business. And it's like, with limited resources and just obviously the market changing, we've all have to adjust.
Yeah, I agree. Awesome. Yeah, good points all around. Okay, so a little bit of a change of topic, and then we'll kind of jump into the more conversations with you, Mike. I wanted to grab your opinion on something. Jeff Bruinsbach posted something on LinkedIn this week. I don't know if you guys saw it. I'm going to put it so that our YouTube folks can read it. This is actually a pretty timely topic for me and kind of the org that I'm in. But the post starts out, CSMs should not learn to talk to C-level executives. Pretty big statement coming from Mr. JB. But one of the points that he brought up, and I won't read the whole post, you guys can go, we'll link to it in the show notes, and you can read it for yourself, and especially the comments, because there's a pretty healthy conversation in there. But the likelihood of getting a C-level into a meeting with you is low. On average, a SaaS business that has at least 36 SaaS tools that they use, and it's probably closer to 70. And the reality is that the C-level isn't on the phone with each of those negotiating every deal. Now, we've spent a lot of time in our industry pushing CSMs and ICs to build higher and wider relationships with executives. Now, you both have sat in executive roles, either currently or in the past, and potentially and hopefully in the future for everybody in this room. But I actually very much subscribe to this belief as somebody who has been in an IC role, who spends a lot of time working with accounts, and having leadership that's pushing me to like, you got to meet with the C-level executives. And it's saying, great, I totally understand why, but the work is done in the trenches. And if we're not empowering our customers to speak on our behalf, then we're losing, right? And so there has been a shift over the last, I would say, 3 to 4 years where it's like we got to build that ground level relationship, and then we still have to be sitting on the executive level relationships. And the feedback that I get consistently from C-level executives at Amazon and these other big companies is like, who are you? What are you doing here, right? Which is an indicator that we haven't done a good enough job sharing that value. I'd love to hear your thoughts on maybe this part of adding so much onto a CSM's job to set expectations. Go ahead, Mike.
I'm glad you brought this up.
Cut me off as much as you want.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about this topic, so it's great. So I don't know, it doesn't have to be a C-level person, right? Because at Amazon, you're not going to get that. But at a smaller company, perhaps you can. You're really trying to get to the executive sponsor, the decision maker, the one that's going to be signing the renewal or the expansion, right? And so this goes back, for me, it goes back to, earlier I'd mentioned trying to make things more simple, going back to basics. To me, the most important phase is customer onboarding. Customer onboarding starts when the customer signs the contract, could start earlier, right? And it goes past go live. It goes all the way to time to value, in my opinion. That's customer onboarding. It includes implementation. There's a lot of customer onboarding that's outside of implementation, like, change management, executive connections. So a lot of the symptoms we're dealing with and talking about on LinkedIn are symptoms. They're symptoms of a customer onboarding program that is not doing its job. And so what I'd like to see with my teams is a mapping. And so I'm mapped to the executive. The CSM is mapped to the project team. And that's the mapping, right? I don't expect the CSM to have a relationship with the VP. If they want to, and if there's an opportunity to, yes, go for it. I've had that in my past as a CSM, but it wasn't an expectation that I would be talking to the C-level as well as the project team, right? And so that's the mapping I like. I will have an executive connection from the time the contract signs. I will use it to escalate. They will use it to escalate to me as well. And often during customer onboarding, project teams don't show up. Project teams are giving the wrong information to their executive sponsor or no information. And so I need to hold the customer accountable, and I don't mind doing that. And this happened at a customer of ours when I was at MyTech. It was a big bank, and the project team was not following best practices. That happens all the time. Yes. They have a timeline. They cannot follow best practices. Fair enough. Does the executive at the customer know that? She did not. And so we informed her, and now she's informed that her team is not following best practices due to the timeline. That's fair. But when you go live, you're not going to see the results that you think you're going to see. Okay. Now she's educated. She understands her expectations are set. They go live. They don't see the results. It doesn't turn into an escalation, right? So that's a long wind up to saying that I believe someone in customer success needs to have that executive connection. And it doesn't have to be the CSM, but it does have to be someone. And if you don't do it during customer onboarding, good luck trying to get back in front of that executive. It's never going to happen.
Yeah, I love it. Kristi, thoughts? Anything to add?
So I'm going to give you it depends, right? So it depends on the size of the organizations you're selling into, right? You talked about Amazon as an example, John. No, you're not going to be meeting and hobnobbing with the C-suite at Amazon. And listen, if you do, I hope that you would invite me. But let's just not make that the expectation for our teams. The reality of it is, right, thank you. The reality of it is, in these smaller organizations, it could be that you're working with the VPs and the C-suite during onboarding. And Mike, to your point, that's the core team. That is your project team. There might not be a robust implementation. So I have to say it depends. I get what Jeff is, the point that Jeff is making, because there are so many leaders who maybe they're newer, they're less experienced, less tenured, they're learning, they're getting their footing, and they've heard everybody forever say high and wide, get to the executive level, build those relationships. I do think it's a false expectation to set, because I do think it depends, right? Structure the relationship mapping based on the customer, based on your organization, right? For me at Client Success, me and Dave, Dave Blake, our CEO, we are the executive sponsors for our customers, right? And not all of our customers have executive sponsors, but top of our segments absolutely do. And on the smaller end of our segments, the reason why they land there is that these are usually smaller organizations, and my CSMs are working with the directors and the VPs, and those are our stakeholders. So it depends, right? Don't insert yourselves and try to build relationships that just aren't organically driving value for your customers. And this goes back to my whole premise around EBRs and QBRs. I'll tell you, I spoke at an investor, a VC organization. They ran an event last year. I had a room full of co-founders and CEOs, and I asked them. I said, "How many of you attend EBRs and QBRs for the products that you use in your company?" And not one person raised their hand. So I in turn then said, then why would you expect any of your customers' executives to attend these meetings? Like, can we just stop? It's these silly things that we have put in place because they worked in consulting, and they do, because the way consulting does, they drive value. So we stole this idea from a consulting framework, tried to put it in place. We fucked it up, for lack of better words. And now we continue to drive these motions that don't make sense for these businesses. So we've got to get smarter about doing what is appropriate for our customers to get them to where they need to be.
Well, the appropriate experience. It sounds like our buddy.
Nobody wants
Lincoln
to talk about the appropriate experience
10 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
yes,
Kristi,
thank you.
I'm using this exact that exact talk track internally at my company too, where it's like, we use Tatango and we use these other tools, Pendo. It's like I'm talking to my CCO and our leaders saying, when's the last time you showed up for a QBR for these tools that we use? And like, I've never done that. And it's the same thing. It's like, and you expect us to pull these in. Now,
different?
Again,
what's different?
Right. The pushback that I'm going to give to both of you, and then we can close the book on this and say that we solved the biggest problem in customer success, is one of the processes, and as leaders, you guys I'm sure have seen this, is if the only time that an executive is talking to another executive is at a point of escalation, which is what oftentimes happens. Something isn't working, something is bad, something isn't meeting expectations. That tends to lead to risk if you're only engaging with these executives when there's a problem. And I know that as our industry shifted over the last 5 to 10 years, we started to say, oh, we actually should have some good conversations with that guy. Like every time I call that guy, there's a problem, or he calls me, there's a problem. Let's do something better. And then it started to kind of evolve into this. Now we need to have these deep relationships on every single level. How do you guys take point of escalations? That's what I'm used to. That's kind of the going back to basics, where it's like my CCO will call your boss if they're like, red flag, everything's on fire, we can solve it at that level. But talk you through that.
I love escalations. I love customer escalations. Maybe that's controversial. I'll tell you why. Often I step into a role and I don't get a customer from onboarding on it. They're already live, et cetera, right? And it's hard to get that executive connection. A customer escalations is a great opportunity to do a lot of things. One, you're going to get a lot of engagement from that executive.
Because it's bad.
Because it's bad. And they're going to be all over you, fine. The quiet ones, customers I'm worried about. The ones that are yelling at me, no problem. We have a playbook for that. So, and it gives us an opportunity to really refine our red to green playbook, right? Put it into action instead of this theoretical thing that I put out there on the Confluence page. Now we got to actually try and run it and see what works and what doesn't, and we get to refine it. Now, eventually, any CS leader or CSM that is good can turn a customer from red to green. That is what we do. So that's not a problem. So we will get that customer green. I will also use it as an opportunity to say, hey, if we're able to fix this, will you be a reference? Will you come speak with us at a conference? Can we do this, that? I ask for a lot because it's going to take a lot of our time and expense and investment to get that customer green. And then can we have, cover your ears, Kristi, but can we have business reviews where you attend and you will attend them? It'll be twice a year, but you will attend. And they'll eventually say every single time, if you can fix this for me, I'll give you all that. Right? Yeah. Great. Let's document it. Let's fix it. We fix it. We follow up and we get some of those things, sometimes all of those things as well. So escalations, I see them as opportunities. But I think your question was, well, let me try to answer your question in how I interpreted it. If that's the only time you're talking to an executive, then that's not good. And you need to figure out a different plan.
All right. So can I add something here, John? Is that okay?
Yes, please.
Okay. So Mike, I don't disagree with how you described escalations, but the reality is not enough executives are proactively meeting with customers. That's a fact.
Nope.
I spend 60% of my calendar time in proactive customer meetings. These are not escalated discussions. These are customer conversations that I either have regular recurring monthly or quarterly meetings with customers, different segments, they get different cadences where I'm meeting with the leaders. I'm not meeting with these core teams. Yeah. And our conversations are platform agnostic. We are not talking about our solution. We are talking exclusively about what are the challenges that they're facing today? How can I offer them some advice, some guidance, some expertise, a point of view from other customers that I'm speaking to. We have proactive motions that are designed in our customer journey that come directly from me, come directly from Dave at all different points. I am meeting with customers all the time. And I will tell you, those escalation conversations look and feel a lot different because I have a pre-established relationship with them. And so I would say for executives that are not really dedicating time to that, I think you're doing it wrong. I get it that there's a ton to do and there's a ton of like the business to run, but I feel like there is a ton more value that our business gets from the effort I put behind having these customer discussions at the appropriate times around relevant, valuable topics that have nothing to do with just us. It strengthens things I think it changes the game for us in terms of our relationships.
Let me ask a couple questions there. And I totally agree, by the way. I 100% agree with what you said. I think the how is interesting.
Oh, okay. Like, can I tell you? Do you want to know how?
Yeah, well, let me ask 2 questions.
Hey, everybody, it's Josh. I'm taking a quick break from the podcast to tell you a bit about UpdateAI. I started UpdateAI to solve 2 major challenges for CS teams. The first is that we save CSMs 4 to 5 hours per week with our productivity through AI. Secondly, we give leaders a window into all the conversations across each account and the entire portfolio. So we help knowledge transfer, we help increase the coverage model of your CS teams, and we help you detect emerging patterns in what your customers are telling your CSMs across all the risks, product feedback, advocacy moments, and expansion opportunities. So come check us out at www.updateai. It's completely free to sign up and trial.
Like,
can I tell you? Do you want to know?
So, yeah, well, let me ask 2 questions. So one is, how do you get these meetings? And the second is, take yourself out of this customer success world, because you're a product that customer success professionals use. And I would say that, when working with Coveryears, working with Gainsight, if they asked me to meet, I would say yes, because I'm in customer success and I just feel like we have this connection. So in your previous roles, it wasn't a customer success tool or product. So it has to have been a lot harder to get those meetings because you're not dealing with customer success people as your contacts.
Okay. So yes and yes and yes. So all right, let me give you some context. So
okay.
I'm going to work backwards. So your second question there is like, how do you do it when you are not the subject matter expert and you're now asking for these conversations? Guess what? I guarantee you that there is a subject matter expert in your business. So for example, when I worked at Better Cloud, it was a SaaS apps management solution. Okay. So we sold to CTOs, CIOs, CISOs. That's who I would bring to those calls though. So I would proactively ask my customers, I'm like, hey, listen, our CIO is working on something really interesting. I would love if we can get 15 minutes on your calendar to share and ideate and see if these are things that you're working on. And I would be present. Maybe I'm not the one orchestrating it, but I was able to leverage their time strategically. Other times it might be my CTO. It could be somebody else. So what I'm saying here is that there's probably a subject matter expert in your business that you should be bringing in. Now, on the flip side of that, Mike, the reason I'm at Client Success is because I found out that as a leader, I provide value as a subject matter expert. So I will never actually go to an organization ever again where I can't provide intrinsic value to my customers, not extrinsic value through a product. I want to be able to know what it's like to sit in the seat of my customers and be able to engage them thoughtfully about what they're really going through. So I do think that this goes back to this original debate, do you hire CSMs or do you hire SMEs? Because I will tell you, my customers get a lot more value from somebody who's sitting in their seat than they would otherwise. And my other most successful role in my career when I was at Bright Edge. And why? Because I was a subject matter expert. I was a former customer of theirs. I'd used their solution and I could have strategic, valuable conversations. So getting on calls with executives was a no-brainer. People took calls with me all the time.
Okay, let me ask one more.
Yeah, go for it, Mike.
Let me get in there, John, before you do, because I'm going to lose it. I'm going to lose the question. Okay, so I toyed with the idea when I was in identity verification was the domain, of calling our CSMs identity consultants.
But were they?
Because, yes.
Okay.
And I had the customers had trouble understanding what a CSM was. I mean, You could say some companies understand so I think I'm agreeing with you that the domain expertise and being able to consultant and an expert in SME, whatever you want to call it, is super valuable. And so I don't know, is that what you would hire? Would you look for SMEs in 2024?
Yes. Also in 2021 and 22 and 23 and 20. Like, since I made this,
it limits your pool though. It limits your pool.
It does. Sure. Of course it does. But let's be more thoughtful about that and who we're hiring. And it doesn't mean everyone you hire needs to have that background, but this is where the diversification, of thought that you build into your teams. Great. Hire 5 people that have CS backgrounds, right? And then hire 10 people who are SMEs and make sure there's this kind of cross-pollination of like learning and expertise to like up-level the skills of the folks who aren't the subject matter experts. Maybe be thoughtful about what accounts you're putting them on. And then the folks that you are hiring that are SMEs, put them on different accounts, right? Like, where is it going to, again, we're just going back to the same thing, which is how do you add value to your customers? right? Because that's all we're trying to answer here. And then all we're trying to do right now, the three of us, is like, let's all wear glasses and a black t-shirt and try to figure out how do we do exactly the same thing. Different organizations.
Going, guys.
It is a vibe today.
It is a vibe.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm going to pivot a little bit because I do want to get to Mike and some of the things that we talked about with your career and where you've been and where you're going. Just to give the listeners just a little bit of prep, you are currently looking for your next role. And you are being very selective. One of the things that I wanted to spend the next 10 to 15 minutes talking about is, something that I have gone through personally. I know I've talked about it on this podcast before, where I took a job at PayPal, and it was a very great opportunity. And there's a lot of wonderful, vim and vigor behind it, thinking that it was going to be kind of the perfect role. And within a couple of months, I realized that I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I was the wrong person to solve the problems in that space. And I got angry. I was pretty pissed. And I probably wasn't the most healthy in how I posted about it on LinkedIn or wrote about it in my newsletter. But I think that there's an intelligence that we can learn after the fact, after we go through a process where we take a job with hope and then we come out the other end. And I know this, I'm kind of leading the witness here a little bit. You're in one of these places right now. So I want to give you a little bit of space to talk about the process that you've gone through coming from ID and where you're at right now, and maybe some of the lessons that you learned about being true to yourself, being respectful of an employer and a business, organization, and then kind of leading from the place that you've come from, which I think is a very humanity-driven place from what we've talked about.
Yeah, I've learned a lot about jobs and how they fit into your life. And so also natural conclusions to jobs and it being okay.
Yeah.
Everything is okay, right? All your feelings are okay. A job coming to a natural conclusion is okay. It doesn't mean you're bad. Doesn't mean they're bad. It really doesn't mean any of that, right? So let me give you some context. So yes, I'm looking for my next role, and I'm talking to how I'm evaluating it. Hopefully that's helpful to some listeners on how I evaluate roles. I think one important thing is to know where you are in your life, right? And so that's an important piece as well. When I was at MyTech, I was there for 5.5 years, and that job came to a natural conclusion. And before that, I had thought, if you leave a company or a company asks you to leave, that's a bad thing. I have a different opinion of that now. We're all good at certain size companies, and we're all good at certain things. And what I realized about myself is that I'm good at a refresh. And so if a company wants to do a refresh of customer success, that's where I'm probably the strongest. I have global experience as well. And so that's something that I can leverage. But once you get the refresh going, the next person to make it like really the operational rigor that I told you was a weakness that I'm trying to strengthen, that is the area where I wasn't very good. And so once the refresh gets going, it's probably time for me to leave, whether I leave or the employer tells me to leave. And I got very okay with that. It's like, okay, that makes sense. No hard feelings. We're good. I did what I was supposed to do. And so that was a learning about myself. Now, as I'm looking for my next role, I'll just tell you, I was very motivated to get a title. I think we can all experience that. I really wanted to be a director. I really wanted to be a VP. I really wanted to be a chief. Actually, that part was interesting. I never wanted to be a chief customer officer.
Because you talked to Kristi, right? And she told you
I probably convince people daily to pivot their career strategy.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a chief customer officer. However, you got to know yourself, and I didn't want to do board management. I didn't necessarily want to hang out with I wanted to be in the field. And so there are C-suite level roles that you can be in the field, right? So it's really important to me that I'm in the field, that I'm coaching, that I'm working with the CSMs, the individual contributors, that I'm mentoring, that I'm an advocate. All of that is super important. I get excited when I talk about it. Building a diverse team, like Kristi, you'd mentioned, is super important to me. So where am I going with this? So yes, I was chasing a title. And what I've learned is forget about the title. What do I want to do in this role? Right. And then, so that kind of opens you up to evaluating the company. What size are they? Are they PE backed? Are they public? How long has the leadership team been in place? Right. Is it a new team? Who am I reporting to? What is the org structure? What am I going to be responsible for? I always thought I wanted services under me, which I still do. I believe in order to build a Kristi's laughing. In order to build a strong, operationally efficient, customer-facing team, you need to show up as a team, and the customer shouldn't have to know your org chart to figure things out, right? They don't care if like services sits over here under one leader and CS. They just are working with your company. And so, I over the last few months, I really understood what I want out of the next role. And so those are the things that I'm looking at. I want to also be able to influence individuals' career in a very positive way. And so being an advocate and not just a mentor, I learned what the difference is there. I also learned to trust looking at as much data as you can about a company. And I'm sure employers feel that way about the employees that they hire as well. They look at, they check references, they background, they do all of that. So we got to do the same when we're looking for jobs. And so that's super important. I'll pause there, see if there's anything I stirred up.
Yeah. I mean, I want to ask you one question, just because,
Sure.
I know we've got a bunch of listeners that are, kind of at the top end, they're in your roles, but we also have some like folks that are entry level that are maybe thinking about those titles and thinking about how to decide where to go in their career next. What is one thing that, like, if you could take what you just said, the advocacy and not just mentorship, how would you coach an individual that is saying like, I'm in the wrong place, this isn't fitting my goals? How do you start that communication with your boss so that it doesn't come to a natural conclusion that isn't a positive one, right? Sometimes those natural conclusions could actually be damaging, whether you're getting fired or getting moved into a PIP or anything, because you're not showing up for your full self. Like, I do think that a lot of times in this remote world, it's hard for people to advocate for themselves, and the grass is always greener. So they're just going to jump somewhere else. But those hard conversations oftentimes lead to a potential positive outcome, whether it's leaving the company or moving into a new role. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you would coach someone through that.
It's tough. I mean, if you're an individual contributor early on in your career, it's scary to have that conversation with your manager or your leadership, because it could turn out very negative, right?
Yeah.
I would say that if you are uncomfortable having that conversation with a manager, maybe that's a sign that you're not in the right place. Right? Yeah. I'll just pause there, because I think that says a lot. If you're a manager, when I lead, one thing, I try to keep things simple. I was 100% invested in everyone's career, right? And I really wanted them to do well and to feel like they can come to me for advice. I felt like I've been through a lot. I have a lot of experience, and so I can share some of it. Doesn't mean they have to take my advice. I just share my experiences, and they can do what they want with that information, right? So if you're not comfortable having that conversation with your manager, maybe you're at the wrong place. I would say that, I don't know. Does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah. And I guess, we can even just kind of stop right there, because I do think sometimes we'll even go back to what we talked about at the beginning, right? We see this suggestion on LinkedIn. It says, make sure that you're transparent and honest, right? And show up with your full authentic self, and all these like things that make you feel good when you read a poster or a post on LinkedIn. But the reality is sometimes we have really shit bosses that are not mature enough to be able to take that type of conversation, right? So I'd love to hear maybe some experiences that you've had. You talked about some of the lessons that you've learned about, like, how do you identify if you are able to have that? Like, if your boss is mature enough to, what are some things that you are proud of about yourself that allows someone to come to you to say, look, I'm going to have a hard conversation and I need you to be mature about it and not be a little bitch like so many people can be, right?
Yeah, I think it's up to the leadership, right? So what you mentioned was that conversation or that post or whatever it was that said you got to be your authentic self. The leadership needs to create that environment so that you can show up as yourself, right? So that's really important. I think when I was an individual contributor, I would have conversations about my career, right? And that is something we would have skip level meetings. I would push for that.
Yeah.
And so just in those meetings, you'll understand whether this person is invested in your career or not. Are they multitasking? Are they pushing the meeting, right? I've had that happen too. My career, we're going to have 15 minutes. It gets pushed 5 times. Like, okay, well, this probably isn't something they're interested in. So that gives me the answer that I needed and all the information that I needed about this place. And also, can I go to this person? I probably can't, right? So there are definitely signs. You just need to pay attention to them. But also advocating for yourself, and making sure that your career is a topic at least a couple times a year with your manager, with your VP. But you also have to perform, right, as well. So make sure you're doing that.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for that. Well, wrap it up here. Kristi, do you have any last questions that you want to ask? I've got a couple, one or two more bullet points to cover from Mike, but I wanted to make sure you had an opportunity, to tie the knot on anything from your standpoint.
Mike, here's a good one for you that I think will help folks who are listening in, who are in similar situations or who are looking for their next roles. But give me like your one question you're going to ask a CEO that you feel like is the response to this might dictate whether or not you continue in the process or you would entertain an offer.
What is customer success? No.
I mean, that's a valid one to ask a CEO and see how they respond.
We'll see how they respond. Yeah. No, I mean, I would want to know how we're going to be measured, right? And how's that different? I think that tells me a lot. That's kind of like a less insulting question than what is customer success, but it gives me the same answer, or it gives me the answer that I need, right? Oh, you're going to be measured on net revenue retention. Okay, then I have some follow-up questions, right? Customer base health. How long is the average, customer length? What's the churn rate, et cetera, all those things. But I don't know, culture has become really big to me. And so let me turn that around to both of you. What questions would you ask to really get to the heart of what the culture really is, besides what you see on their website, right, when they talk about culture?
Okay.
Kristi, go first.
So culture isn't, not that it's not as important to me, because everyone defines culture differently. I think the thing that's more important to me is, what is that CEO value? Like, what are their personal core values? Because as an individual at that level, their values will permeate the organization, regardless of what this culture is, right? Because again, culture looks and feels different to everyone. Like for me, I don't want to play games. I don't want to have chit chat and BS. Like that's not what makes a fulfilling culture for me in an organization.
That's what the podcast is for.
Right. I have actual CS friends for my culture stuff. So for me, I want to understand, like, what do they personally value? And so for me, it might be even digging into things outside of work. Like, where does family rank in their core values, right? Where does health and wellness rank in their core values? So if I'm asking a CEO, listen, you spend majority of your time running this company, and I get that. When you're not running this company, how are you spending your time? And I think their response to that and how they kind of elaborate will tell me a lot about who they are, right? Is it their family? Is it work? If you have somebody who's like, nope, this is it for me right now at this stage in my life, like it's just this company, I don't know that that's going to be an organization that I'm going to thrive in at the level that I'd be coming in at, because their expectations for me are going to be the same and to match their energy. And honestly, I can't give a company 100% of me, not today or not ever. So I want to know that somebody values family and balance and health and wellness and like these other things that are really important to me. So I think for me, it's going to be less about culture and more about them. Like, let's take a step back. I want to get to know you on a deeper level. What does your life outside of this company look like?
Well, how do you dig into that? Because the 95% of individuals, when you ask them that, are going to say, my family is the most important thing. Right.
Well, I might ask them, how do they spend their time? Right. Because sure. Right. Like my family is important to me, but like how I spend my time, guess what? Like I make sure that I have dinner with my daughter every day. Every day. She comes home from school. She comes into my office. She does her little wave and check in and interrupts whatever thing I'm in the middle of. And then she knows at like 5:30, I can make myself available to cook her a meal 90% of the time. I have dinner with my kid. That's going to tell you about my cultural boundaries, right? Like my day is going to end at 5:30 and I'm going to go and I'm going to step away and I'm not going to be available unless it's urgent, right? Or something pressing. I understand that. But like I'm prioritizing that. Me and my husband, we value fitness. I'm going to go for like, we exercise together. We go for runs together, right? Like, so what I would talk about if someone was asking me that, I'm going to give you specific examples of like how I'm spending time, how I'm showing up for my family, how I prioritize those things. And I think I would ask the line of questioning that would allow me to understand that. Like, great, you have kids. Yeah. Do you go to your kids play sports? Do you go to their sporting events? Great. Your daughter dances. Right. How did she do at her last thing? If you tell me you've missed her last 3 recitals because board meetings, okay, well, then I very clearly understand where your priorities lie. Not that board meetings aren't important, but you know what I'm saying. So I think I would go down a line of questioning, because if you're coming in at an executive level, you should want to build a relationship with these people. These are going to be who you spend all your time with. So I think when you're at that level and that stage, asking those types of questions is organic, and it should just be part of the process, because you have to connect with people.
Yeah, I love that answer. That really gets to the you're forcing them to answer a question in a way that you can actually use that information.
Right. Or like, tell me a time when you had a work priority and a family priority, and how did you decide what got your attention in that moment, right? Like, even asking those types of behavioral style questions. Tell me a time when, give me an example of, but challenge them to really show you where their priorities lie.
Yeah.
I love it.
The one thing that I say, because I completely agree with that. That is a huge part of it. One of the things that I tend to ask often, especially if I'm in one of those skip level, senior leadership, CCO level, when is the last time your perception or presumption was challenged by a low level employee in IC and it was changed? And what does it take for your opinion to be changed? If I'm coming in because I'm a high functioning strategic person, and again, we go back to the SME conversation, I have a ton of domain experience in what I'm doing. And if they're unwilling to take the feedback from their team, it's a huge red flag for me. It is absolutely imperative that, not that every opinion is equal and that everybody has to have a say at the table, but if there is like a legitimate reason for us to have a conversation, and I'm bringing data to you and I'm bringing opinions to you and thoughts that are based on what our customers are saying, and you discard it because of my title, then that's not a company that I want to work for. And I think that really feeds into culture. And when it is shown across the board that, man, Melissa had a really great opinion and she's a junior CSM, but I'm going to take that data point and I'm going to sprinkle it in with the rest of whatever I need to get, and it's actually going to help inform things. That actually helps build that culture that we're talking about, where you have the ability to have transparency and honesty.
John, can I ask you a question though on that specific framing?
No, you may not.
Well, no, yes, that frame of question. So here's what I'm going to ask. So you might not change my mind, but we might change our process. So here's the thing, right? Like, so I think also, like, I don't think it should be about changing people's minds or their perceptions of things. Do we change how we do things differently? So for example, I had a CSM today send me an email about, like, how can we be better about setting communication expectations in Slack? Because everyone in our company hates Slack. We use it, we hate it.
Everybody hates Slack.
I know. So she brought some really great examples, and I said, awesome, bring that to our team meeting tomorrow. You solicit everyone's feedback. Like, you run with it. I think it's a great idea. I think it's very valid, your point, your concern. I'm empowering you to now go and drive this forward. But that means you have to own this, right? Like, and that's the other thing is, like, so I'm going to put it back on whoever brings something to me. That's fine. I'm going to empower you. I'm going to enable you, but this is your thing. And so if you don't see it to its fruition and bring it to the end, that's not a shortcoming of mine. That's a shortcoming of yours.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think the best ideas come from the field, right?
Yeah.
They come from the field, and I'm all about experiments and I'm all about ownership. So I like it when CSMs have their side thing that they're working on to make our organization, our company better, in addition to managing their book of business, right? Those are the future leaders to me, because they're already thinking about, how can I make things better on a bigger scale, on a larger scale. And so, I love that.
Yeah. And I think that kind of wraps it up really nicely. Like, that is, in my opinion, the job of the CCO, is to ensure that at every stage of your process, of your customer, of your organization, that not only the customers, but the people that are working directly with the customers, that their voices and their thoughts and experiences are being shared with the rest of the executives. Because if something that the sales team or the product or the marketing team is doing that adversely affects the successful outcomes of your customers, and we don't have a path to resolution behind that, then we're all going to lose. Awesome. Well, boy, howdy. I loved this conversation. Mike, is there anything, where can people find you? Are you speaking anytime soon? Are you going to be on site anywhere? Are you going to be speaking at Pulse this year?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I will be at Pulse, and I'm speaking at the Customer Success Festival in Las Vegas. I think both of those,
May 22nd.
I know both of those are in May.
Yep, May 22nd for the Customer Success Festival in Vegas.
Awesome. Well,
are you going to be there? Either of you?
I was going to be. I'm not. I will be speaking at 2 events, though. I've Demo Fest on the 21st, and then I have Propel Rocket Lane's event on the 22nd.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm on site with customers during the Las Vegas one. And then I'm not going to go to Pulse this year because I have budget approval to go to CS 100. So
yes,
that's going to be my focus this year.
You didn't tell me.
But I know we just got it approved. So
we got a live reaction recorded.
I know. I'm excited. But Mike, I would love to find a time if we're ever kind of in the world together. I really appreciate this conversation. If anybody listening wants to hire Mike and agrees with where he's coming from,
and maybe if
hit him
Mike
up. Also,
wants to work at your company.
That's a better way to put that. I would love to have you back on, Mike, when you do move into your next role, and for us to have kind of a health update or health check, I guess, not a health update.
Yeah, that'd be great. I can share what we're working on and how it's going, the good, bad, the ugly. And if you're ever in San Diego, look me up.
Awesome. I love it. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm going to end.